Yeah, the other people doing that.
behalf of Ira's family, I welcome you here and those who are watching at home. And thank you for your presence in both places with this family. As we are gathered here to celebrate the life of Ira Charles Mogen, let us praise God, who is our certain hope in all of life's different circumstances. In the face of death, we believe the good news that the scriptures tell us. From Isaiah 66, we know that as a mother comforts her child, so God comforts us. From Psalm 103, we know that as a father has compassion for his children, so the Lord has compassion for those who honor God. Matthew 5 tells us that blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And the promises of John 11 give us this assurance, with Jesus saying, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. One of the things that ties the Mogen family together is music. And we have several pieces of music to share with you today. The first piece I invite Megan Powell to share with us is called Mogen. We have come together here and virtually surrounded by the strengthening fellowship of friends and family to praise God for the life of Ira, to share our grief with God and one another, to reaffirm our faith in God's unfailing goodness, to hear again God's promises of resurrection, and to celebrate Iro Charles Mogen's life and commit him to God's everlasting care. Dr. Iro Charles Mogen, age 88, of Yankton, South Dakota, passed away on Friday, July 3rd, 2020, at Avera Sisters James Care Center in Yankton. Iro was born June 18, 1932, to Gilbert and Helen Mogen. He graduated from Wabe High School in 1950 and enrolled at the University of South Dakota. After 1 year, he transferred to Yankton College and graduated in 1955. Iro was a longtime educator in South Dakota. His first assignment was in 1955 in Summit, South Dakota, where he taught government, music, and coached basketball. Iro met Suzanne Dannenbring when they both attended Yankton College. They were married on December 27, 1955 in Chamberlain, South Dakota. Iro and Suzanne moved to Killeen, Texas after Iro was drafted and completed basic training. He served the Army in Division Finance at Fort Hood from 1956 to 1958. Following his discharge in 1958, Iro and Susan moved back to South Dakota. Iro was a music teacher in the Alexandria School District. He completed his doctorate for educational administration from the University of South Dakota. He was an assistant superintendent of schools for the state of South Dakota and also served as superintendent of schools in Avon, Mobridge, Faulkton, and Millbank during his career. Iro and Suzanne moved to Yankton after retirement in 1955. Iro was awarded the Distinguished Service Award by the South Dakota High School Activities Association in 1989. He was a member of this association's Board of Control Services to his community. He was also a member of the board of that association. Service to his community was important. Iro was a choir director for many years at the United Congregational Church in Mobridge. He was a member of the Mobridge Rotarians. In later years, Iro and Suzanne were music leaders at Avera Sacred Hearts Adult Daycare in Yankton. Iro is survived by his daughter Lynn and Frank Mason of Hot Springs, South Dakota, and Ann Palomeri of Woodstock, New York. Sons Jay and Nayla Mogen of Peoria, Arizona, and Bruce and Bonnie Mogen of Del Rapids, South Dakota. Grandchildren, Alex Mason, Emily and Joe Stiegel, Christian Mogen, Alejandro Mogen, Mariano Mogen, and Brad Mogen. Great-granddaughter, Paige Stiegel, brother, Chris and Kathy Mogen of Aloha, and brother-in-law, John and Ruth Ann Dannenbridge of Yankton, South Dakota, and sister-in-law, Janice Morton of Brainerd, Maine. Iro was preceded in death by his parents Gilbert and Helen Mogen, his wife Susan Mogen, and brothers Hubert, Phil, and Brian Mogen. The second piece of music is the hymn that you've been handed out. And thank you all for wearing a mask so that we will be able to sing together this morning.
Praise
Gracious God, your unconditional love endures forever, and your faithfulness lasts through all the generations. You are trustworthy in all your words and gracious in all your deeds. Please minister to us now in our grief. Speak to our hearts your words of comfort. Touch us and give us hope through the music and the promises of Scripture. Embrace us through the fellowship of all those who are here and at home sharing our sorrow. Fill us with the joy and peace that can only come from you. Let the light of Christ bring to us that peace of your presence. Christ, who taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Our third piece of music is called Reverie, and will be brought to us by Luis Viguez. now invite Brett Mogen to share the scripture readings with us. They come from Exodus 15, verses 1 through 3, and Isaiah 52, verses 7 and 9.
I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my might, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him. My Father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. How beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of the messenger who announces peace, who brings good news, who announces salvation, who says to Zion, your God reigns. Listen, your sentinels lift up their voices together, they sing for joy. For in plain sight they see the return of the Lord to Zion. Break forth together into singing, your ruins of Jerusalem. For the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem.
Thank you. We have one more piece of music by Louise. It is the hymn A Closer Walk with Thee. I now invite Bruce Mogen to share some of his memories with us and lifting up the life of Ira.
Wanted to first thank the musicians. Yeah, that's something Dad really appreciates. And also just the voices of family and friends singing a hymn. That's something you're not allowed to do. So thank you for doing that. My dad had many talents, and one of his best talents was that of storyteller. And I promise you I won't tell you all of the stories, but most of you would be in them. And he loved talking about all of us. Since Mom died 5.5 years ago, I've heard even more stories. As he explained, I'm sorry you are going to hear the story again, but you realize since your mom isn't around, that's how it works. And I didn't mind. He often talked about his family and friends and days as an educator and great experiences over the years. He covered lots of territory, and I always enjoyed hearing about it. He liked to talk about his days growing up in Waubay and how much he valued his parents. He would say his dad was very bright and an excellent banker, despite few years of formal education. And his mom was very educated and trained and extremely competent as a piano teacher. He would tell many stories about his brothers and their talents and how much he loved them. They stayed close in all his years. And as the 5 of them grew up and blazed their own trails, he would be proud that Bert ran the bank with his dad, and Brian and Phil were FBI agents, and Chris became a businessman, and they had wonderful families. After Dad graduated from Waubay High School, he found his way to the University of South Dakota, where he enjoyed being around his brother Phil, who he said was called Bear. And so naturally he became Cub. But then he decided to try Yankton College, where he felt he could be involved in other activities with his cousin Dick. I asked, "What did your parents say?" He said, "They didn't know. I just did it." I found out later my dad thought I was going there to become a minister. I guess we didn't communicate very well. But he had other sons to worry about. At Yankton College, he enjoyed the choir and activities and was even recruited to play center on the football team when they were short of players. I said, "Were you any good?" He said, "No, I could barely snap the ball." And at Yankton College, he met his future wife, Suzanne Dannenbring, but then she decided to transfer to USD. So I said, "So you were at USD, and then you went to Yankton College, and you met Mom, and then after she met you, she went over to USD, and you stayed in Yankton. It sounds like she was running from you." And his answer was always, "Maybe, but I caught her." And then he would think about it for a while and he'd say, "I can't believe she picked me." He was so proud to bring Suzanne into the Mogen family, where his brothers' wives became her new sisters, and he marveled how Suzanne and his own mom would play piano duets together. Then that tradition carried on to my sister Lynn and her own daughter Emily, and now even Paige at 10 months at the piano. He loved the family connections and how interests and talents were shared with each other and on to the next generation. He was also so pleased to join the Dannenbrings, John and Jan, and my mom's parents, Ernie and Adelaide. He would talk about how Adelaide was such a lady, poised and skilled, working at selective service. And the best compliment he could ever pay his father-in-law was to say Ernie became his best friend. The relationship that I had with my dad was obviously close, as he had with all of my siblings, all of his children. You always knew he loved you, no question. He supported our activities and rarely missed an event. I can remember coming home from playing in a game, any game, and hearing the same thing almost every time. It didn't matter if we won, or I played well, or I played poorly. He said, "You did well, and I'm proud of you." I think that extended to his whole family. He was always proud of his parents, his brothers, his nieces, nephews, grandchildren, the whole family. And there was never a question that he loved them. My dad has lived a great life and impacted many. We talked recently, and I said he can be assured that his children are doing well, and that he is a big reason for that. And he didn't need to worry about us, so we were ready to go into the world and have success. He made a difference as an educator and in his faith, and it all mattered. I knew it was important for him to hear that. And now it's time for me to say to my dad, "You did well, I'm proud of you, I love you."
Thank you, Bruce. From talking with the family, I think I have decided that Iro had 3 big passions in his life: music, baseball, and education. Or maybe 4, because I think his passion and love for people tied all of those other ones together. Iro was born into a musical family. His mother was a traveling piano teacher. She traveled by train and taught piano in the different places the train took her. When she met Iro's dad, she mail-ordered a piano, which she used from that day forward, and this particular instrument has been passed down within the family. Iro's mom gave it to Suzanne, Iro's wife, and she gave it to Lynn, her daughter, and Lynn has given it since to her daughter, Emily. And so this piano has stayed in the family and moved down the generations. I'm sure, as I've heard just now, that Paige is playing probably on that piano too. Iro was the 4th of 5 sons of Gilbert and Helen Mogen. With a piano teacher as a mother, these 5 boys did a lot of singing at a lot of different events. And this entire family, from what I believe, there's a lot of music in it. There are cousins who have bands and groups today. I believe one of them is Mogen's Heroes, who often plays at the Riverboat Days here in town. Iro met Suzanne, as Bruce told us, after he transferred from the University of South Dakota to Yankton College. And she, I believe, was the love of his life. They married after Christmas in 1955, after Iro was drafted into the Army, and they moved to Killeen, Texas, where he was stationed. His duties there were in the Human Resource Department, and the great story of fame that he had was that he got to process the paycheck for Elvis Presley while they were both serving in the Army at the same time. I believe I've heard there's even a picture where he holds up the check, showing that he wrote Elvis's paycheck. Iro and Suzanne were a team in everything they did. Iro was an educator in school, while Suzanne stayed at home teaching piano there. Iro was the choir director at the church in Mobridge, and Suzanne was the organist accompanying his choir. They were a team as parents raising their 4 wonderful children, and they loved them very deeply. They were part of many social groups together too. As I said earlier, music was a family thing that tied them all together. It was never a question if any of the kids were going to sing in the church choir or do any music in school. It was just assumed so. That was what the Mogen family did on Wednesday night. They went to choir practice. And what they did on Sunday morning, they sang in church. What they did for Christmas and Easter. I imagine there probably were children choirs and adult choirs, and Anne tells me that she remembers doing her homework after choir practice at the church. Lynn told me that at family gatherings, they would have impromptu recitals with different people playing music. And she had a friend who would often act as car hops, taking everybody's order for what they wanted on their Sundays. In later years, after Ira and Suzanne moved to Yankton, they were part of the church choir at the United Church of Christ, and they led the singing at the Avera Adult Daycare. Even the scriptures chosen today were chosen the same way Ira would choose scriptures for different events, by the songs that they loved. The lines of both the scriptures that Brad read for us today have come from parts of songs that the family loves to sing. Music is the legacy that Ira leaves behind, one of the legacies. His other big passion was baseball. Many hours were spent in the backyard playing catch with his kids, but Bruce tells me that the childhood boys of the town kind of resembled the gang of the movie Sandlot, and they were at some abandoned lot playing baseball whenever they had a chance. As Bruce said, Ira was one of those parents that didn't scream and yell at their kids or coaches or whoever at the high school sports games, but he was the one at home that would tell them that they did a great job at the game today. He always believed in building people up. Wherever there was a game, whether it was close by or on TV, Ira would be watching it. I believe I've heard that even in recent days, he was found at a baseball game for his grandson was playing in. And he was teaching people in the stands about South Dakota and the history of South Dakota and the history of baseball while he was there chatting away with the people. The big passion that occupied most of his life was education. Ira started out as a teacher, but eventually became superintendent, and with that was able to do what he did best on a large scale. He was great at bringing the best out in people and believing in the positives in people. He was good at building people up and bringing them together. He loved serving on teams and committees and boards. He was a great diplomat, and you knew that he had been thinking before he opened his mouth, and whatever came out was always very thoughtful. He also loved the professionalism that came with the job and the suit and tie. His passion for education and bringing out the best in young people was something his own kids got to enjoy firsthand. Anne tells me that her dad taught her everything. She remembers being in kindergarten and asked her dad to help her to learn how to tie her shoes. So he showed her 2 different ways to do it. She practiced and practiced and practiced until she believed she got it right, and then went to him and said, "Dad, is this how you do it?" And his face would light up and say, "Yes, that's how you do it. Now go show your teacher tomorrow in school." Next, she learned to memorize her telephone number, and he also taught her how to drive. One of the stories that she tells me on that is that they were driving along. He was teaching her just fine. She took a turn and didn't realize that there was a drainage ditch over there, and so she drove right over it, but then kept on going, and he kept looking at her. Finally, he encouraged her to pull over so they could look at the tires. She did not realize that she had blown a tire while she did that. All the kids did some kind of music in school, and at home, Ira and Suzanne helped them, guiding them and directing them so they knew what they needed to play whenever they needed to play it, and they could do the best that they had in their abilities. Besides these big passions, he had lots of other things he loved to do too, like reading books and thinking, being by himself and going out and being with people. He loved history and theater and all sports and traveling. But I believe what tied all his passions together was his love for people. He loved the variety of people, how people were all different with all different gifts and talents. And he loved to bring all those different gifts and talents out in people and build them up. All his 4 children are very different, and he loved their differences. Family time was important. and there was lots of good family time in the Mogen family. They went to the lake, they went camping, they had fun swimming, and even had a dream a couple of days after Ira had passed away, where she was swimming in the lake with her dad, playing the games that they always played. And she felt like he was right there with her, telling her that those moments that are important to her were important to him too. Lynn told me about the Iro picnics. Now these were a special kind of picnic. You could not go to the store to buy supplies for the picnic. Whatever you had in the house, that's what you took on that picnic. I'm sure they were some interesting picnics depending on what was in the Mogen house. Sometimes they would invite another family to join them. And in later years, they confessed to Lynn that they had to cheat sometimes and go to the store because they had nothing in the cupboards to take for a picnic. Ira's extended family was also a big part of all the family fun that they had. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and especially during the summers at the lake. The last years without Suzanne were lonely for Iro. He missed his partner to talk with and to hang out with. But as Bruce said earlier, it was a benefit to his children in a way, because those conversations that he would have with her, he now had with his children. Each one of them have memories of very meaningful conversations in the last years and also in the last days. For Bruce, one of the great things that he got to do with his dad was last fall, when they took a trip around the state, visiting all the places Iro had lived. Things didn't look the same everywhere they went, and especially not from some of their glory days, and some of the places were run down, but it was very meaningful for both of them. What Iro leaves behind is his love and pride for all his family, especially his kids, their spouses, his grandchildren, and great-grandchild. His lessons that teach us to remember that we all have different gifts and talents to share. To remember to be kind to other people, no matter what, and to do the best in life that we can. And between all of that, to have fun. I truly believe that he is no longer lonely, and that he is reunited with Suzanne, the love of his life. Thank you, Iro, for a life well lived and making a difference in the lives of so many other people. Iro has sung praises to God all his life and proclaimed God's message of love and inclusiveness from many mountaintops throughout his career. Well done, faithful servant. We have a last piece of music to share with you in the spirit of the love for baseball. If you want to sing along, feel free to do so, since we're all wearing masks. It is Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
We are now in the 88th inning stretch. You must stand to sing the song, and you have to go one, you know what to do.
The family invites you, if you would like to come to Iro's house between 12 and 3 o'clock to share stories outside in the yard or the driveway or the garage or whatever space that they have prepared for that. So anyone is welcome there. Now all who are gathered here and at home, take courage. Know that God is your eternal friend and companion on your journey. May this knowledge strengthen you with the love of God, the peace of Christ, and the creativity of the Holy Spirit. Amen.